Trudeau continues to push it. And what else would we expect from a pathological abuser of all humans? But in particular, we're gonna have a slight we're gonna have a parenthesis on Justin Trudeau. Let me just get to my Twitter feed. Justin Trudeau celebrates Emancipation Day yesterday. Justin Trudeau, oh, I caught that. Justin Trudeau comes out yesterday and celebrates Emancipation Day. Hold on, I got to get to my Twitter feed. I mean, it's the type of gaslighting you can't believe anybody could do with a serious face. Justin Trudeau. Let me see here. Oh, we're going to get into a nice Twitter feed. Here we go. Justin Trudeau celebrating Emancipation Day. The man who has caused more suffering than anyone, I would say, in modern history. He might be tied with leaders of other countries. Justin Trudeau. Here, guys, look at this. Trudeau. Today we acknowledge the painful history of slavery in Canada. Sing it, Trudeau. These words coming out of your mouth touch my heart. We also celebrate the strength of Black communities who fought and continue to fight for justice and equality. Together, let's keep building a more inclusive Canada. Unless you just happen to be those Black Canadians who are reluctant or choose not to get vaccinated, maybe in large part because there has been a history of government abusing the Black population through surreptitious, secret medical testing. If you haven't heard of the Tuskegee experiments, they lasted, just a few decades, telling the Black population they were being treated for syphilis, and in some cases they were not being treated for syphilis, so that the government could see what untreated syphilis looks like in humans. In some cases, they were being proactively given syphilis. It was just the government lapse of reason and human ethics, just for a few decades. Oh, and that residential schooling thing, the Indigenous Canadians who are also reluctant to get a vaccine shot, who are also reluctant to bend over and just do what the government tells them, because the government also has a bit of a history of, residential school abuse and medical experimentation on Indigenous Canadians. They're also reluctant to get the shot. Oh, and the Latino community in Canada, who is also reluctant to get the shot. But now Justin Trudeau, who has imposed a vaccine mandate, which has had a disparate impact on ethnic minorities, Black Canadians, Indigenous Canadians, Latino Canadians, he comes out and he has the gall to talk about the strength of Black communities who fought and continue to fight for justice and equality against a government that has in the past and in the present continued to perpetrate injustice against Blacks, Indigenous, Latino Canadians. Okay. In light of justice, this was not my best tweet on the subject. Hold on, what was the other one? Oh, here we go. You are a racist who implements racist policies which have a disparate impact on Black Canadians. You are a disgraceful, evil, gaslighting tyrant, a stain on our nation. I'm not going to say it felt good to say that, because that tweet is predicated on people actually suffering because of Justin Trudeau's actual policies. And then I get someone saying, "Oh, what's racist about it? Well, what policies exactly? Oh, from a proud Canadian liberal, what policies? Vaccine," and I respond, vaccine mandates, vaccine passports, prohibition on unvaccinated from planes and trains, quarantine hotels, forcing healthy children to quarantine because they're unvaccinated. Is that enough, you proud Canadian liberal? Then at one point, still waiting for the racist side of it, still waiting for what makes it racist. Policies, this is a principle of law. It's not a rule. It's not a hard and fast rule. Sometimes you can have a policy which has a disproportionate impact on certain minorities, and it's not a racist policy in and of itself. But if you happen to do it knowing specifically that it's going to have a disparate impact on certain ethnic minorities, and you still implement it, that's a racist policy. And by the way, this is an argument that, let's just say one side of the aisle, I'll say the Democrats, use quite often. Voter ID, according to Democrats, is a racist policy because according to Democrats, they think minorities can't procure government IDs. Who's racist in that thought process? I'll leave that to you. I know what I think. It's people who think that minorities can't get IDs. But they use this argument all the time. Republicans want voter ID laws because they're racist, because it has a disparate impact on racial minorities. And minorities can't get government IDs. They use the argument all the time. Wrongly, I would suggest, but they use it all the time. Policies that have a disparate impact on minorities are racist policies. Knowing, because we know this, and I show my homework. Vaccine hesitancy, StatCan says Black, Latino Canadians least willing to take the shot. Okay, that's one. And then this is another one confirming the low vaccination rate among Indigenous Canadians for the reasons I mentioned prior to. Residential schools, by the way, they didn't just rip Indigenous children from their families for the purposes of assimilation for their own good. When the government did it, by the way, they did it justifying their obscene actions on the idea that it would be for the good of the Indigenous children. Assimilation at the time was seen as the only way to assimilate Indigenous Canadians, or the Indigenous, into the Canadian population. They did it for the good of the children when they ripped them from their parents, put them in these residential schools where they were abused in a variety of ways, including medical experimentation. You just have to look into it. Sometimes they were not given medication that they needed. Other times they were being surveyed. They were being sort of assessed as they were starving to see what effect deprivation of certain nutrients had on the Indigenous children who were ripped from their families, put in these residential schools, subjected to the most inhumane types of abuse. But at the time, the government was doing it for their own good. They were just too obtuse to understand it was for their own good. The only way Indigenous people will have a future in Canada is if they're fully assimilated. Knowing that, and knowing it, because the government knows it, have nonetheless implemented policies. They may as well say, Blacks, Latino Canadians, Indigenous Canadians, you got to quarantine. We're going to make you quarantine at a higher rate than white Asian Canadians, who are statistically more likely to get vaccinated, probably because they haven't had the same history as Black, Latino, Indigenous Canadians. Canadians, knowing that Black, Indigenous, and Latino Canadians are in fact less likely to get vaccinated, enacting these policies effectively renders them second-class citizens. Unless, as the good liberal says, unless they just have to do what the good liberal says. I'm liberal. I know what's best for minorities, and just do it. Just shut up and take the shot, ethnic minority, because it's for your own good. Like we said way back in the day. Like we said throughout history, which is why you are in fact reluctant to heed to the words of the government unquestionably, because you have been systematically abused by the government, and now you're being systematically abused by the Trudeau government. But the proud Canadian liberal, no, dude, just do it. We know what's best for you, as we did back in Tuskegee, as we did back in the residential schools. We, the liberals, we, the knowing all Canadians, we know what's best for you. You're stubborn. You're obtuse. You're incapable of knowing what's good for you. You need us to tell you that. And so shut up, take the shot. And if you don't, well, enjoy your 14-day quarantine just because you're not vaccinated if you decide to travel. Or you know what? Just don't travel. What are you, spoiled? You think you get to see the world? So that's what's going to segue into just, I need to remind everyone what an awful, lamentable, disgusting human being Justin Trudeau is. And arguably 2 times ethics breaching. So I can officially say, he violates the law twice at least. Now, I saw a super chat that I don't want to miss because I haven't been seeing the super chats for a while. I never corrected a comment. I'm banned. No, you're not, Corn Pop. Here, sorry. Maureen Brown. It's my birthday, and I'll cry if I want to. Spend this money on your children for the years I've traveled around the sun. 60, so you're 65. Happy birthday. They make me happy, and you do too. Maureen Brown, happy birthday. Thank you very much. We're on vacation in Texas. So we undoubtedly travel with 3 kids, man. I'm not complaining. It's fantastic. Stressful. 5 people in 1 hotel room. Oh boy, can you make a mess fast? But thank you very much, and happy birthday, Maureen. 65. It's a good number. Okay, I'm gonna just. I want to. What did someone say here? Hold on. A little too much soapbox on residential schools, Viva. I don't know what that means. I listened to a number of podcasts after the residential schools became the trending issue in Canadian politics, as though they were just recently discovering mass graves. They had no idea. It's like they just recently discovered these mass graves, of which they have been aware for the last 7 years since the Truth and Reconciliation Committee gave them all the names of all the kids. Government did nothing for 7 years. Come election time, Justin Trudeau's literally posing over what he purports to be the graves of dead Indigenous children. But if anyone needs, Justin Trudeau, I tweeted out today, in 2000, he groped a reporter and apologized for it. In 2016, he elbowed a parliamentarian woman in the chest. It was known as Elbowgate. They call it Elbowgate. I would have gone with Breastgate, because Elbowgate makes it sound like it's about the elbow, when it was about Justin Trudeau, like a tyrant buffoon that he is, goes across, manhandles one member of parliament, and in the incident, elbows a female parliamentarian in the chest. And I've been told that that hurts women. That's as sensitive to them as getting kicked in the chi-chis is for men. That's what he did in 2016. 2019, he fires Jody Wilson-Raybould, demotes her, ruins her career because she would not adhere to his corrupt demands not to prosecute this company called SNC-Lavalin for corruption when they were guilty of corruption. He defames Alexa Lavoie and Rebel News, but Alexa in particular, doesn't answer her questions, calls her misinformation. He assaults his RCMP, Royal Canadian Mounted Police, during one of the protests. At point blank range, discharged a tear gas firearm into Alexa Lavoie's leg while she was wearing her press credentials, carrying a microphone that said Rebel News, accidental discharge point blank into her leg. And I said, what is it about Justin Trudeau that he gets off abusing women? And we need to just occasionally refresh our memories as to what a disgusting entity, a horrible entity. That he's been reelected 3 times or twice blows my freaking mind. People don't know who Justin Trudeau is. Trudeau, this is 4 years old, people. So it's old news. Forget about it. Water under the bridge. I apologized to reporter behind groping claim. Canada PM very confident he did not act inappropriately at music festival in 2000. Oh, was that when he was also not acting inappropriately by dressing up like a black person, by dressing up like a sultan, or what's his name, Aladdin? He's confident he didn't act inappropriately while he was dressing in blackface. That was about the same time, I believe, actually. The Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has for the first time publicly acknowledged that he apologized in 2000 to a reporter who alleged he groped her, but said he was very confident he did not act inappropriately. Well, of course, when you're the king, you can't act inappropriately. In fact, when you're the king, how dare anyone not take to your advances for groping them? And by the way, let's just parse this out a little bit. He apologized to a reporter who alleged he groped her. Do you know what most people wouldn't do? They wouldn't apologize to someone if they didn't do something that would potentially ruin their political life. He apologized to someone who accused him of groping her. That means he made contact. And the only question is, was it deliberate or accidental? And if it was deliberate, was it invited or was it uninvited? The unsigned editorial. The accusation first appeared in a local newspaper a few days after a music festival in British Columbia that Trudeau, then a 28-year-old teacher, was attending. By the way, there's another story out there. I know people like to talk about it, an alleged NDA. Until it's confirmed, it's going to be rumor that I might believe to be true, but it's going to be rumor nonetheless. The article that published it, something Beaver, the conservative Beaver, it's not a real publication. So until it's confirmed, it's something that I've heard rumorings from peoples, but it remains rumor until it can be confirmed. But the unsigned editorial, Crescent Valley Advance, accused Trudeau of groping and inappropriately handling an unnamed reporter who was covering the event. These types of things don't happen by accident. Now, I am very much inclined to give everyone the benefit of the doubt. This is not an accusation that comes 35 years later, by the way. So when we talk about, like plausibility of certain stories and the fundamental right to a defense in real time, this reporter, as far as these incidents goes, did it properly. The complaint came in real time, contemporaneously with the event, not 35 years later, not 20 years later, not when someone decides to run for office 10 years later, at the time, in real time. And Justin Trudeau apologized. He admits it. He admits it also. So it's not like one of those things where it's categorically denied. I did not have sexual relations with that woman. When I say I did not, I mean I did. And with that woman, I mean, he admitted it. So the accusation came in real time, contemporaneously with the events, and Justin Trudeau admitted something happened and he apologized for it. While the editorial offered no specifics on what had happened, it claimed the reporter felt blatantly disrespected and Trudeau had apologized for his behavior. I'm sorry, the editorial alleged Trudeau to have said, if I had known you were reporting for a national paper, I never would have been so forward. Where does it get to? Trudeau addressed the allegation briefly on Monday, describing the day of the event as a good day. I'm sure it was. And one in which he did not recall any negative interactions. Of course not, because the king never recalls negative interactions, because everyone should be amenable to the advances of the king. After calls for an independent investigation into the claim and opposition criticism of his initial response, Trudeau addressed the issue at length on Thursday. I've been reflecting very carefully on what I remember. By the way, I've been reflecting very carefully on what I remember from that incident almost 20 years ago, he told reporters. I do not feel that I acted inappropriately in any way, but I respect the fact that someone else might have experienced that differently. He touched her. He's admitting he touched her. When asked about why he had apologized to the woman after the alleged incident, Trudeau said, if I apologize later, it would be because I sensed that she was not entirely comfortable with the interaction that we had. Pressed further, he acknowledged he had atoned for his actions at the time. I apologized in the moment, he said, without giving details. This is the same guy who has his officers manhandle Drea Humphrey from Rebel News, a woman, a black woman, if that matters to anybody, because not just a woman, an ethnic minority, while Justin Trudeau apologizes for, emancipation, while he celebrates Emancipation Day. By the way, by Drea Humphrey, Trudeau manhandled. Here we go. Just another incident where he apologizes. He apologizes. You can go read the story. I remember it occurred. I'm sure he apologized to her. I apologize if Drea felt uncomfortable by the way my police manhandled her and removed her from the scene. So just a refresher. He did that. Then what was the other one? Then what was it? Elbowgate, people. Elbowgate. Once is an accident, twice is a coincidence, 3 times is enemy action. Elbowgate. This is coming from Wikipedia. So if they admit something that's negative to Justin Trudeau, it's got to be twice as serious as it otherwise would be. Elbowgate was an incident in which Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau came into physical contact. He just came into physical contact. He didn't initiate the physical contact. He just came into physical contact. It just happened. It was like a meteorite just crashed through the room and shuffled everyone together. He came into physical contact with 2 opposition members of Parliament in the House of Commons on May 18, 2016, during the parliamentary session. During the incident, Trudeau grabbed Conservative MP Gord Brown by the arm and then inadvertently elbowed NDP MP Ruth Ellen Brosseau in the chest. Trudeau subsequently apologized and was not subject to parliamentary sanctions for the incident. Hold on, people. See if we can find this. Elbowgate Trudeau. Skip this ad. I don't need fiber, people. I don't need fiber. That has nothing to do with my... Look in the corner right here, people. Oh, yeah, like a bunch of, look over here. If there's no slow motion, I'll play the. I'll replay it. I think I missed it. Humans are the smartest species on Earth, people. Look over here. Like, oh, right there, right there, right there. Ow, you see it? Right there. Look at the blonde lady right there. Who knew about this, by the way? In the chat, 1, I did not know about this. No. 2, yes, I knew about this. Elbowgate. It doesn't stop there, people. It doesn't stop there. This is the prime minister. Why would anyone expect a man who systematically gropes, abuses, assaults women? Why would he behave any differently now? In fact, he would and probably does feel empowered because he's gotten away with it for last 20 years. And now he's figured out the best way to get away with it. Buy off the media. Buy off the media. That'll at least buy you some time. Let me see if I can't find Drea Humphrey. Trudeau assault. Let me just see if we can find this here. Nah, too many other stories coming up. Why would he behave any differently? Good. People, a lot of people are. What other scandal should we do with Trudeau? I mean, I've talked about Aga Khan, where he was taking all-inclusive paid vacations to the Aga Khan's private island, taking the RCMP, who apparently were renting jet skis, ran up a bill of $65,000. Didn't think it was necessary to disclose that gift from a man who's petitioning the federal government for $50-60 million in federal funding and getting it. What else did Trudeau do? Oh, SNC-Lavalin fired the first Minister of Justice who was Indigenous. He was so proud. He was so proud to have nominated the first Indigenous Minister of Justice and Attorney General. He took credit for nominating her. He then fired her when she refused to adhere to his pressure not to criminally prosecute SNC-Lavalin for corruption in Libya, I think it was. Fires her, demotes her, ruins her reputation. Abuse. It's just one thing after the other. Okay, that's Justin Trudeau.